My friends, right away it feels like we've reached the moment where every decision, every adjustment, every ounce of urgency finally matters. 10 days of a mini-bye might sound like a breather, but for Detroit it's really just the calm before the storm. 4 games left, 3 of them on the road, and every single one carrying the weight of a season that has refused to fall apart, no matter how many chances it's had to. That win over Dallas didn't just keep the playoff hopes alive, it preserved something that has quietly defined this team since October of 2022, the refusal to drop back-to-back games. It's one of those streaks fans talk about without even realizing how rare it actually is. And now the Lions sit at 8-5, right on the edge of the NFC picture, heading straight into a closing stretch that isn't just difficult, it's defining. And it begins in Los Angeles. You don't need me to tell you how weird it still feels to see Matthew Stafford in another uniform, let alone playing at an MVP level with a league-best 32 touchdown passes. But here we are, and the reality is simple. Detroit is about to walk into a building against a 9-3 Rams team that ranks top 8 in total offense and scoring, backed by the number 2 scoring defense in the league and a top 10 pass rush with 33 sacks. They're powerful, balanced, and playing with a kind of confidence that demands a perfect response. The Lions know that, and if we're being honest, this is the kind of matchup that will test everything: Jared Goff's poise, the protection up front, the consistency of the defense, and even the ability to withstand big moment pressure on the road. The streak, the playoff positioning, the narrative of the season, everything goes through Los Angeles first. But once Detroit gets out of that game, the entire atmosphere shifts because Week 16 brings the final home contest of the regular season, and it's against a Steelers team that's been struggling to hold itself together. Pittsburgh walks in at 6-6, and for a franchise known for defensive identity, toughness, and structure, it's jarring to see them ranking 28th in total defense while allowing over 365 yards per game. They've dropped 5 of their last 7. They're 1-3 against NFC opponents, and the cracks are showing. That kind of vulnerability is rare for a Steelers team, and Detroit absolutely has to take advantage of it. A late-season home game, coming off a brutal stretch of travel, against an opponent that has clearly lost some footing. There is no excuse for anything less than complete focus. This isn't one of those trap games people like to pretend doesn't matter. This is the last time Ford Field gets to roar before the postseason picture locks into place. And then comes the return to Minnesota. And yes, the sting from Week 9 is still there because that 27-24 loss at Ford Field changed the temperature of this season. Not because the Lions played poorly, but because they let J.J. McCarthy get comfortable, and he made them pay. 2 passing touchdowns, another on the ground, all while completing just 54.1% on the season overall. The Vikings are 1-4 at home and still searching for stability at quarterback, but that's exactly what makes them dangerous. They're unpredictable, and Detroit cannot afford a repeat of the mistakes from the first meeting. You let a team like Minnesota hang around, and suddenly your entire playoff path becomes a lot more complicated. This Week 17 matchup isn't about revenge, it's about momentum, because right after it comes what might be the most volatile finale the Lions have faced in years. And that brings us to Chicago, a team that started the season quietly, only to turn into a real NFC North problem under Ben Johnson. A team that ranks top 10 in offense and scoring. A team that hasn't lost at home since Week 1. A team that still has 2 games against Green Bay plus a trip to San Francisco before Detroit even gets there. In other words, they're either going to be fighting for the division, fighting for seeding, or fighting for their season. And the Lions will be walking into Soldier Field in January weather with everything potentially on the line. That's not drama, it's just the truth. And the truth is this: the final game might be the deciding factor between a division title or squeaking into the postseason as a wild card. Every yard, every possession, every adjustment from now until that final whistle will shape what this franchise becomes over the next month. So looking at this entire stretch, at everything that's about to unfold, at everything that's at stake, what do you think, Lions fans? How confident are you in Detroit navigating these final 4 games? There's a point in every season where the identity of a team stops being something you talk about and becomes something you either prove or abandon. And for Detroit, that point is right now, inside this 4-game gauntlet that doesn't offer a single inch of comfort. Because once you peel back the optimism, once you strip away the hypothetical scenarios and the if this team loses, then calculations, what you're left with is a simple, unavoidable truth. The Lions have to win when it matters most, in environments that will challenge them physically, mentally, and emotionally. No shortcuts, no soft landings. The matchup in Los Angeles sets the tone for everything that comes after it, because beating a 9-3 Rams squad on their field isn't just about keeping playoff hopes intact. It's about proving Detroit can rise to the level of an opponent that is surging, efficient, and led by a quarterback who still knows this Lions franchise better than anyone. Matthew Stafford at this stage of the season is a different kind of problem, and Detroit's defense can't afford to get caught chasing him all night. Pressure has to hit home, communication has to be flawless, and the secondary has zero margin for hesitation. A win there would reverberate throughout the conference. A loss wouldn't end the season, but it would immediately shrink the margin for error to almost nothing. That's why the Steelers' game becomes more than just a late-season home send-off. It becomes a command performance, a chance to reset, to fix whatever went wrong the week before, to stack momentum instead of scrambling to recover it. Ford Field has carried this team through moments of doubt before, and if Detroit walks into that game with clarity and purpose, Pittsburgh's defensive struggles can be exposed early. But if the Lions get sloppy, if they play down to the opponent, that's where doubt creeps in, and doubt is the one thing this fan base has learned to recognize from a mile away. And then there's Minnesota, a game that feels bigger than the standings suggest because of the emotional weight of that Week 9 loss. Detroit didn't get outplayed that afternoon. They got out-executed in specific, critical moments, especially when J.J. McCarthy escaped pressure and extended plays. That cannot happen again. This matchup has to be controlled, disciplined, and physical from the very first quarter. If Detroit wants to walk into Chicago with real momentum, they must close the door on the Vikings early instead of letting the game linger into another stressful finish. Which leads to the finale in Chicago, where everything, absolutely everything, could be at stake. Soldier Field in January has ruined seasons before, for teams much better positioned than Detroit is right now. The wind, the cold, the unpredictability of the Bears' offense, and a home crowd that suddenly believes again after months of progress under Ben Johnson, it all builds into a matchup that feels more like a measuring stick than a divisional game. Detroit has struggled historically in these kinds of environments, and this is the moment where the narrative either changes or repeats itself. This is where coaching adjustments, situational discipline, and big-time plays separate playoff teams from playoff passengers. So as we stare down this final stretch, it's impossible not to feel the weight of everything hanging in the balance, the playoff chase, the divisional race, the identity of the team, and even the expectations this fan base has rebuilt over the last 2 seasons. With all that in mind, if you're riding with this team all the way to the finish, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button to push this video further, and check out the videos on the screen for more Lions breakdowns. And the truth is, even after breaking down every matchup in every scenario, there's still this lingering question hovering over the entire final stretch. How does this team respond when everything compresses into a single month of football where every mistake feels bigger and every opportunity feels smaller? Because what we've seen all season is a Lions team capable of punching with anyone, but also one that sometimes needs to be pushed into a corner before showing its best football. Now there's no more room to wait for that spark. The urgency has to be immediate. What adds another layer to this closing run is the emotional undertone that comes with it. Fans understand the stakes, but they also understand the history. They know what late-season collapses feel like, they know what missed opportunities look like, and they know how rare it is to enter December and January with real leverage. That makes these games heavier, not because of fear, but because of possibility. The idea that Detroit could walk into Los Angeles, protect home turf against Pittsburgh, handle business in Minnesota, and step into Chicago with everything on the line, that's the kind of scenario older fans never got to dream about consistently. Now it's real, and with that reality comes pressure the franchise has spent decades trying to earn. And internally, there's something powerful about that. This team is no longer asking for belief. They're expected to validate it. They're expected to prove that the process, the culture, the consistency, and the resilience everyone talks about actually holds up when the stakes rise. No narrative means anything if the final 4 games don't back it up. That's why every possession matters. That's why every defensive stop feels bigger. That's why every red zone drive is a chance to define the season instead of just extending it. As Detroit prepares for this stretch, it's not just about talent. It becomes about composure, about adjustments, about staying calm when the stadium gets loud, when the weather turns ugly, when momentum swings the wrong way, when the playoff picture shifts in real time. These are the moments that separate good teams from serious contenders, and for the first time in a long time, Detroit has a chance to step firmly into that upper tier by simply taking care of business when it matters most. Because if they get through this, if they survive the Rams' firepower, overwhelm a struggling Steelers squad, correct the mistakes from the first Vikings matchup, and go into Soldier Field ready for a fight, then the Lions won't just be a playoff team. They'll be a problem no one else in the NFC wants to deal with. A team battle-tested, road-proven, and forced to sharpen every weakness through pressure instead of comfort. That's the path. It's brutal, it's unforgiving, but it's also exactly the kind of proving ground the great teams walk through before they make noise in January. And now the question turns back to the fan base that's lived every moment of this roller coaster. And if we're being honest, part of what makes this moment so intense is that nothing about this final stretch allows for autopilot. Every single opponent forces Detroit to confront a different version of itself. The Rams test the Lions' ability to stand toe-to-toe with a heavyweight offense that won't give them a second chance. Pittsburgh tests their discipline against a team that may be inconsistent but is still built on physicality and pride. Minnesota tests their ability to correct the exact mistakes that cost them earlier in the season. And Chicago tests their resilience under pressure in the kind of environment where the cold cuts through everything except toughness and preparation. These aren't just games, they're checkpoints. And the Lions won't get through them by leaning on what they've done before. They have to evolve in real time. That's what good teams do when the calendar flips late, when the air gets colder, when every snap feels like it comes with a heartbeat behind it. The Lions have built themselves around a mentality of grit, confidence, and response, but now those qualities have to be more than slogans. They have to be actions. They have to be habits. They have to be the reason Detroit doesn't blink when the pressure tightens. And let's be clear, the pressure will tighten. There will be moments when the offense stalls. Moments when the defense bends more than the fans would like. Moments when a drive slips away, a turnover swings momentum, or a missed opportunity threatens to rewrite the story of the game. But these are the moments that shape playoff teams, not the highlight plays, not the blowout wins. It's the uncomfortable possessions, the critical third downs, the final 2 minutes of a half. That's where Detroit has to show that this season isn't just about improvement, it's about arrival. What makes this stretch so fascinating is that it will demand every part of the roster, not just one unit or one star. The offensive line will have to be the anchor it's always been. The receivers will have to win in tight windows. The run game will have to show consistency even when defenses stack the box. And defensively, the Lions have to rediscover their ability to disrupt rhythm, collapse pockets, and shut down explosive plays before they happen. It's a collective test, not an individual one. And when a team passes that kind of test, it becomes something different, something dangerous. Fans can feel it, too. It's the strange mix of excitement and tension that only shows up when the stakes get real. For years, late-season games were about draft position or moral victories. Now they're about survival. They're about legitimacy. They're about proving that Detroit isn't just a fun story or a team on the rise, but a team ready to punch its ticket and make real noise against the best in the league. And the truth is, that shift, that transformation from hope to expectation, is the clearest sign of how far this franchise has come. The Lions have something to protect now, something to chase, something to prove, and over these next 4 weeks, they'll have every chance to show exactly who they are and what they're building toward. So with all the pressure, all the opportunity, all the urgency building toward this final push, here's what every fan is wondering right now. Will this team seize the moment and turn potential into something bigger, something lasting, something worthy of the belief this fan base has poured into them? And that's the question that hangs over everything right now, because the Lions aren't just fighting for wins, they're fighting for validation. Validation that the culture isn't just real but durable. Validation that the improvements aren't temporary but foundational. Validation that this roster, this staff, and this identity can withstand the exact stretch of games that historically would have broken Detroit teams in the past. That's what makes this run so defining. It's not about perfection. It's about resilience at full volume. As the schedule tightens, the emotional needle inside the fan base shifts with every passing day. There's anticipation because they've seen flashes of what this team can be when it's operating with sync and confidence. There's anxiety because they've lived through too many winters where everything unraveled at the worst possible time. And there's pride, a quiet, stubborn pride, because no matter how rocky certain weeks have been, this team keeps showing enough fight to stay in the mix. That's not accidental. That's a reflection of how they've been built. But now comes the moment that was always going to arrive. The point where belief has to be backed by execution. The point where the players have to deliver 2-minute drives on the road, close out fourth-quarter leads, convert red zone chances, and avoid the turnovers or penalties that turn winnable games into regrets. The point where coaching decisions get magnified, when timeout management, aggression on fourth down, and defensive adjustments matter more than anything printed on a stat sheet. The point where every snap feels like a swing in a season that's balancing on a razor's edge. These next weeks won't just test Detroit physically, they'll test the poise of the quarterback in hostile environments, the communication of the secondary against creative offenses, the patience of the run game when defensive fronts stack the box, and the energy of the front seven when fatigue sets in deeper than it has all year. These aren't glamorous tests, but they're the ones that separate contenders from participants. And fans know, deep down, that this team has been preparing for this without even realizing it. The close wins, the tough losses, the back-and-forth games, the late comebacks, the emotional swings. All of it shapes a team for December and January. And as fans watch from home, from bars, from stadium seats, the emotions will only get louder. The hope will feel heavier. The moments will feel bigger. Because this isn't just another season, it's a chance to redefine what Detroit Lions football means in the modern NFL. It's a chance to prove that grit isn't a marketing slogan. It's a chance to show that all the talk about culture and identity wasn't empty noise but the early chapters of something that can last. And all of it comes down to how this team performs when the lights brighten and the calendar shrinks. So as we push deeper toward the season's final weeks, with everything set up for a dramatic finish and every minute carrying meaning, one question rises above the rest and refuses to quiet down. After everything you've watched this season, the highs, the setbacks, the comebacks, the pressure, do you feel like this team is finally ready to finish the job? And if we're being honest, that question isn't just pointed at the team, it's pointed at the entire identity of the franchise. Because finishing the job has never been about talent alone. It's about a psychological shift. It's about shedding the weight of decades where the Lions were defined by almost, by not yet, by maybe next season. It's about stepping into moments that once felt too big and treating them like they're exactly where this team belongs. That's what separates good teams from those that rewrite their own history. As these final weeks tighten around Detroit, there's a sense that every drive will tell you something. Every adjustment will reveal something. Every response to adversity will show whether this team is finally built for the pressure that comes with meaningful football in December and January. Because the truth is, pressure is a privilege, one the Lions didn't get to experience for far too long. And now they have it, in full. Whether they embrace it or collapse under it will define the next chapter of this franchise. Think about how far things have come. For years, late-season games were background noise. Fans watched because loyalty demanded it, not because stakes required it. Now the stakes tower over everything. Now one missed tackle, one stalled drive, one failed adjustment could shift playoff seeding across the entire conference. And that's exactly where you want to be if you're a legitimate contender. Contenders live in discomfort. They live in the moments where the season compresses into pressure cookers and the ones who survive are the ones who don't flinch. This is where leaders have to rise. This is where communication becomes as important as talent. This is where veterans steady the younger guys, where star players justify star expectations, where coaching staff decisions get scrutinized but also have the chance to become season-defining. These games force clarity. They force urgency. They force focus so intense that every snap becomes a window into who this team actually is beneath the surface. And fans feel that energy too. It's why emotions are running higher now than at any point earlier in the year. It's why excitement and nerves sit side by side in every watch party, every living room, every conversation. Because Lions fans know what this means. They know how fragile opportunities can be. They know how rare seasons like this are. And they know that if Detroit manages to break through this stretch, not dodge it, not survive it, but break through it, then the NFC is going to have to take notice